Don't underestimate
The power
of a single
conversation.
it could change your whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
conversations that matter.
This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple of the Lord till I bring my last.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into INCRadio Chatline, and this is the place where we like to have conversations that matter. I'm Tony Rose Valenzuela, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about not just goal setting, but actually troubleshooting your goal setting and kind of deconstructing why we may not have hit our goals yet or the different stuff that we set out to do. But I'm not by myself today. I have some of my friends here and they hang out with me. I don't know who to go to first to introduce because they're all in different places, That's what's cool about this because we're all in different parts of the world. I'm here in Michigan. I guess the closest one to me is in Illinois, right? Illinois?
Yes, Rockford, Illinois. Hello, everyone. Also, I'm John Cruz, live here from Rockford, Illinois, here in the district of Great Lakes. It's nice to be here. It's nice, and I'm really excited for this topic. I didn't need to be here today, but I wanted to be here.
It's always good to know. And then I don't know which, because it's both California, right? Both of you are from California, so I don't know which one is closer to me, but I guess whoever wants to go first, Melby. Yeah, you can rock paper, scissors. No,
Hi,
take this.
everyone. Me? Okay, me. Hi, everyone. My name is Melvi Tamaya from the local congregation of Orosi, District of Central Valley, California. And I'm super thrilled to be here today with all of my friends as well here on Chatline. Hey,
Yes.
back to you, Tony.
And last but not least, you can see him right there. Let's say
Hello,
hi.
everyone. Sorry, I choked on water before we started. My name is Lionel Ornado from the District of Orange County, California, here in California.
Woo, California. Yeah. So, well, we have different perspectives coming into this topic today, right? All of us are from different walks of life. So it'll be really interesting because this topic, I feel like it can resonate with pretty much anyone, right? All of us have some kind of goal that we've tried to pursue before and maybe run into some walls, not literally, of course, but like just kind of hitting some walls sometimes and you're like, oh no, where do I go? Like, does that resonate with you guys? Have you had any goals lately that you're kind of just, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what to do. Like, I know the typical answer is probably like working out. I hear that a lot. Like, I can't finish a workout or something like that. I don't know about you guys. Like, what's a recent goal that you guys have had that you're kind of that you're willing to share? Of course, no pressure, no pressure. Anybody?
I agree with you, Tony. I've actually set a goal for myself. A couple of months ago, I did a 30-day challenge.
Ooh.
And then, again, life happens. So you hit a stumbling block, and then here I go again. Always, I feel like I'm constantly resetting and starting over. But the one thing that I do make a goal for myself is on my breaks at work, I take about 15 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's basically 30 minutes a day if I know I'm not able to work out consistently.
Oh, I should try that. Though, see, I'm already learning something. We're not even like 5 minutes into our broadcast. So that's cool. So let's work out for you, Melvi. What about Lionel and EJ? Thoughts? Like any
I did
goals that
want
you guys?
to, yeah, I did want to sort of jump on what Melvi talked about was taking breaks at work to do a bit of exercise. What me and some of my coworkers do is like 15 minutes in the afternoon, 15 minutes in the morning. We go on like a walk just around the work area. And on most days, I do get my steps in. I have like a little smartwatch that I use. And like, it's also satisfying to see like that bar go up to hit
Yeah.
that step count, that like the goal that I set for the step count. So it's really like part of it, finding ways to sort of gamify our goals.
Mm.
Do you get to, how often do you hit your goal? I'm just curious.
Um, out of the work week, which is about 5 days, probably like 3 or 4 days out of the 5, I do get my steps in.
Okay, so he's closer to hitting his goals than maybe some of us are.
Or maybe I
What
need to
about you, EJ?
raise it a little.
Yeah, raise the bar. Okay. What about you, EJ?
Actually, just no, just I just hit the goal like just today. Because for a while I've been trying to get my my learner's permit for my driving license, and I've had a couple of retakes before, but I like I don't know what it is like today that I finally passed that exam. So I got my my learner's permit today.
Very
So you
nice.
can say I finally hit the goal.
Okay, so I guess the team guys they've hit their goals. Melvin, we got to catch up. We got to catch up. Maybe this broadcast is more for us. I don't know, but yeah, those are some things, right? And there's a bunch of things that we can think of in terms of goal setting that maybe we just haven't hit yet. Like it could be for those who are going to school, maybe some form of education. It could be from your work, maybe even personal relationships. Some of those who are out to looking for the one, right? There's always trial and error in different things. So it kind of brings us to that idea of what are possible things that could stop us from reaching our goals, right? One of the go-to things that I kind of think of when I think of goal setting is the things that I need, like tangible things, like assets, right? You think of your assets or the things that you can acquire in order to, or the things that you acquire in order to reach your goals. So you think about, like when you're going to school, you're building up that education because you want to get the degree. And after the degree, you get the job, right? Or the career, whatever it is that you're pursuing. Could be a lot of different things, right? So did any of you ever experience that where you felt like there was something that you really needed in order to achieve a goal and you just didn't have it yet? And you were just, this is frustrating. Or like it affected you in a progress or potential to reach some kind of goal. Like I know for me, for a long time, it was education and trying to get, a good career. I'm still working on that on the side. Everybody's timeline is different, right? So for me, I haven't graduated college yet. I graduated high school, but I haven't graduated college. But I'm grateful that I've been able to land a job that can sustain me now. That can sustain me now. But getting to that point was difficult because typically, when you get out of high school, that's the thing, right? You go to college, and I financial struggles, life happens, right? Financial struggles happen, things came into the picture, and I wasn't able to fully to complete that. And I had to look for a job. And it's kind of hard to look for a job when you don't have that degree sometimes, right? Of course, not all the time. This is not generalization to speak for everyone's case, but in my case personally, the field that I was looking at. So that was one of the things that got in my way was education for a bit there. So I don't know if any that struck any chords with anyone in terms of stuff that you were trying to pursue for life.
I'd
Melody.
say like kind of in terms of like for me it's the feeling of would I be able to adapt to something that has stopped me in the past. It's like it's not even just not having the knowledge or the skill set. It's like would I be able to learn the skill set in the first place? Like I say, and no, like I didn't apply for like cashier like type jobs because I felt like I may not be able to learn how to operate the cash register. I may not be able to to count the change like really quickly or fast enough, right? So that's like for me it's like the I guess it's more like the mindset, the feeling that got like in the way. It's not necessarily I lack the skill set.
What about you, Lionel and Melvi? Was there anything that got in your way in terms of assets? Like could be even connections, like sometimes when you think about connections, like, oh, I wonder if, when you're getting recruited maybe to potential jobs, stuff like that. Anything that comes to mind for either of you? No? That's yes, maybe. Yeah.
For me, I can relate with both of you. First, with education and of course resources. I too did experience, financial problems. And at the same time, it boiled to having that mindset of maybe I'll never be good enough, right? And at some point in our lives, we have this, the other side of our brain or, way of thinking of telling us, no, you can't do it. And then you have on the other side, yeah, yes, you can. So the internal battles for me was very, very challenging and difficult. It was one of those things where I had to really contemplate, examine myself, and make a really, really tough decision. And education, because one, I became a single parent, or I'm a single parent. And so I needed to have resources, but at the same time, trying to balance, being a mom full time. So I was working full time, being a mom full time with my duties, and then going to school full time. And then so I experienced another dilemma or obstacle, which is burnout, right?
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, I had to make, again, tough choices to really prioritize and learn and analyze what is it that I really want to accomplish. I couldn't, in one of those things that you have to also care for yourself first in order to become a better person, in order to also take care of others, right? So then I found balance and also reframed my mindset to tell me on a daily basis and practice that on a daily basis that I can do it. As long as we have the determination to do it, nothing and no one will be able to stop us. So until now, I'm grateful that I did choose that path to where I became a stronger person because I chose to do it. And I didn't let any more negativities in my mindset or within me to overcome me, but instead I overcome those obstacles. It wasn't easy, don't get me wrong, it was very hard, but, once you put your mind to something that you really want to achieve, anyone or anything anything is possible as long as you're determined to do it.
Well, I know I saw you nodding. Any thoughts on, any of the questions? Like, because one thing that she did bring up in terms of, she was talking about determination, right? And like, I know that's like a little, that's touching on mindset, and we'll get that to a little bit. But I want to prompt you the question a little bit in terms of, are there times where we think that we need this thing, like let's say it's we need to have this kind of resource, or we need this connection. Are there times when that stuff is needed and not needed in terms of pursuing your goals? Like, have you ever experienced something like that where you realize like, oh, maybe I didn't need that to achieve this goal, or I could have done without that, or there are times where it's actually really necessary? Any thoughts on that? You can actually answer. I know, I feel like you had another answer prior to that, so you can answer that, but I'm also prompting that question too as well.
Okay, so before I forget what I had in mind, I'm gonna sort of add on to, and I've done this twice already, but sort of add on to what Melvi has mentioned is the part of the mindset. Um, like there was a point in time where I had that mindset where I'm like, okay, I started to feel a bit of burnout in when I was going to college. Um, Due to financial struggles, I wasn't able to go to my first choice of school. And then I got waitlisted for my second choice, and then my third choice didn't respond to me at all, or maybe that's sort of the backwards way. But anyway, I went to a community college and started trying to rush through to get to like, I have to finish this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And then sort of about halfway through, I started to feel a bit of the burnout, like, oh man, what's the point of this? I've worked so hard and like, the goal is still so far away. Um, that's where sort of like the negativity of that mindset where wasn't able to really receive that instant gratification of finishing right away because life happens, things get in the way. Sometimes we stumble and we fall, but as long as we pick ourselves back up and being able to take that next step forward and being like, okay, this didn't work, let's try something else. That's something that personally I've experienced, and I believe that I try to generalize it enough that everyone else can sort of learn from that experience as well.
So you actually answered my question in your answer. It was all related. So I'm glad that it worked out together that way, because what it made me think of is your example. What I hear a lot of the time, or at least for the pressure for me, like when I was going into college, was that idea of, oh, just go to university first. Like just go to university first, like, just go straight. And for some people that works for some people, right? But in my situation, when I look back on it, like that probably wasn't the most ideal for me in terms of like the budget that we had then. Like it just wasn't there for us to sustain that. And that was part of the reason why at some point I struggled a bit with continuing. And I do plan to at some point go back. That's still in the plans, right? But that idea of you have to do it this way, right? Like that kind of idea of going back to the question of when are they necessary and when are they just things that we think of like it's because of what's conventional, right? We think of, but everybody's different, right? So I'm glad that you brought that up, Lionel, in terms of it's it's your own journey that you kind of go along, right? And you kind of have to not be so controlling in the process, and just trusting, right? And we say our prayers, right? We say our prayers whenever we're going through those tough times like that, and we still try to push through it. But all of you kind of touched on that idea of the byproduct of those things, of the lacking of assets or whatever it may be, right? Because I know for Melby, in your example, it was kind of like you reached a point where you didn't have the manpower, right, to be able to sustain your family, and all these different things for you guys. For EJ, in your example, even when you were talking about driving earlier, like the permit, right? I'm
Mhm.
sure in your pursuit to that, the not getting it and hitting that wall, that's what really became the byproduct of the mental commentary and dialogue, like, oh no, I'm not hitting the thing that I'm supposed to. What do I do
What
now?
I noticed in that is like every time I made a mistake, I got nervous, and
Mm,
being nervous was what caused me to make even more mistakes.
yeah, same. I feel the same way whenever I'm performing musically.
Mhm.
uh I practice a piece to the nth degree, and then I make the one mistake, and
Mhm.
then a slew of mistakes just comes after. And that's the power of the mind sometimes, right? Where because all of you talked about it in some way, right? You all kind of brought up that idea of we get to that point where we start telling ourselves certain things that it starts to affect maybe our actions, right?
Mhm.
So is there anything that you guys have done before in the past to kind of correct those thoughts? Like, have you ever caught yourself thinking, like, I know in your example earlier, Melvin, you were mentioning you found a way to be determined. Like, how did you find that determination? How you mentioned internal battle. So how did you kind of get past that? What was it that you were telling yourself in order to kind of push through?
Because in my situation, I'm no longer just referring to my own life. Another life is now depending on me. So that's why I was determined to overcome whatever battles that I needed to face. I had to make, again, tough choices in life, which now not only will affect me, but also my child, right? And so these things, as I got older, I mean, don't get me wrong, it took me years to finally get my degree in my education. It was not easy. Like Lionel, I felt like giving up halfway through because of the burnout, financial resources, and everything else in life on top of it. But when I looked at my son and said, "Well, you know what? If you give up, what's going to happen to us now? It's not like just me, right?" So he became also a part of my life and a part of my inspiration. And if in case, in the future another life will come, or another, future partner, let's say, will come along, then now I don't want to be dependent on that person either. I want to also be able to help, providing to be a part of a family and not just be dependent again on another person. So that was my ultimate goal. Was I've already thought of the future from the day one that I had him, and it was I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and knew that it was going to be tough all the way through, but I'm hopeful. I always do my best to think positive no matter how difficult life is. I never knew it could be possible until I developed that, I guess you can say, part of like an emotional intelligence, be self-aware. And again, it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of what you want to do in your life. What do you want to accomplish? And if you want to be happy, you want to be successful, it takes work. We can't just, sit and sulk and be sad. Yes, it's okay not to be okay sometimes. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry if we need to, right? But at the end of the day, we all have to make choices to where do we want our lives to be? And what is it that we dream of? And I know each of us aspire in different ways. And we have motivations, we seek inspiration even from others. We have mentors, we have people that we look up to. And and yes, internal battles are difficult to handle, but it's not possible, or it's not impossible, I mean, to overcome it.
So heartwarming to hear, like, from that motherly perspective, right? That idea of gathering that strength, right, for your child. I love that, Melvie. It makes me think of my mom too. So I think about shout out to my mom. EJ and Lionel, and any thoughts on that? I know, like, we don't have that same perspective, but I'm glad that she's able to bring that kind of perspective in terms of a mom. But like for us, still single, I think. Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, all of us are, yeah, all of us. I'm pretty sure all of us are still single. So for you guys, like, what are ways that you've had to correct your thoughts, like, because we don't have that overwhelming, like, oh, I need to do this for my child, right? But I think of intention and purpose, right? Has there been like an overwhelming sense of purpose towards something that kind of pushed you out of that funk, or that kind of like, maybe at one point you were sulking and you're like, how am I gonna get out of this, right? Like, what was the thing that pulled you out, I guess, is what I'm asking.
It's thinking of like where like, because one of the things that Melvin mentioned that kind of like struck a chord with me was like, you it's what you're going to do, what you're going to do next, because to pull myself out of like this sort of like mindset of like, uh, the mindset of would I be able to do it? Would I be able to adapt? It's like I gave myself this, I know, this analogy of like, what if you're on a small boat floating in the ocean and you see an island at the distance, but before you, I know, before you try to row towards the island, you keep thinking, oh well, what if there's not enough food there, what if there's dangerous animals, what if there's, I know, if there's this, what if there's that. And if you think about it, I'm not gonna make progress if I just sit on a small boat in the middle of an ocean. I need to do something, right? And there's the opportunity there's the chance. So if I don't do anything, I would say it puts me in an even worse situation than if I tried. Like, so it's so what I try to do now is like I push myself to at least try. Uh, like, if it doesn't work out, then you figure that out after you cross that bridge when you get there. But you have to, like, for me, I try to push myself to at least try it, to try it first before I say that I can't.
It's like shutting the door or locking the door before you try to open it, right? That's the imagery that
I admit that it has there's some flaws in that plan where it's sometimes it might give me tunnel vision to just, okay, just go for it. But it's like, I just tell myself now I'll address the problems when I get there.
But that's a lot. I'm sorry, excuse me. That's a part of it though, right, EJ?
Mm.
Because a lot of the times what happens to us is that we look at our options, we don't like what our options are, right? We don't like,
Yeah,
because the
like,
example that you gave, right? Who wants to be stranded in a boat? And
mhm.
then who wants to think about, being on an island with things that are going to attack you, like poisonous things. Like I'm terrified of all things that are crawling, poisonous, all those things, right? So you look at those options and you're like, I know this one feels the worst being the boat, right? But it's that idea of, I guess we can say, like, removing expectations, like already expecting that it's gonna go wrong because of allowing where your mind goes to think. And that idea of what you said, just try, because you don't know what that opportunity, where it can take you, right? So that was a good analogy. I'm gonna sit on that for a while. I'm stuck in a boat. I could be stuck in the boat or go to the island. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way. What about you, Lionel? I saw you kind of perk up a little bit. Was there something that came to mind for you?
Many things. I'm gonna see if I can get them out in order. um, Another thing that, to add on to EJ's analogy of being stuck in a boat, is, always, but it's good to think about our options. What could be there on the island? If I stay here, what happens? Are there any fish in the water or anything like that? But in the process of troubleshooting our goals, the number one thing that we should remember is that the journey, it's a saying that the journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one. So as long as we take that first step and continuously take the next step forward, sometimes, we might stumble, take a couple steps back. But as long as we take that step forward, um, we are then one step closer to our goal. We are then one step closer to that vision that we have for our future, that, when we had, when we were kids. um and self-correcting the thoughts, and the aspect of self-correcting the thoughts, one thing that I know we're not really supposed to use social media as sort of as a comparison of where we are in life, because, right, social media, people usually just post the best parts of their life. We don't see all the struggles that goes on behind the scenes. um the way I've sort of self-corrected that sort of thinking is thinking, okay, they're there now. What can I do in my life that I can change to sort of help me go in that direction and take steps towards that direction? Sort of not using it as a comparison to myself, but more of a tool as a motivator, like, okay, I want to be able to do this. Let's break it down into steps. And that's what, try to figure out what they did behind the scenes. Always try to find out what the most successful people did behind the scenes, to sort of try to apply that to our life as well. And that really helped me figure out, um, okay, breaking down tasks, like insurmountable tasks, into smaller steps, digestible tasks, not steps. Hopefully you're not eating your steps. But you are stepping to get rid of what you eat. There you go.
I gotta say, Lionel, I like that you mentioned taking that first step, and I just want to say that sometimes that first step, but when you start to see that progress, it can be also the start of like the shift in your mindset as well. When
Yeah,
you
it
start to see, and yeah, you take that first step, you're like, that was scary, but I did it.
yeah, it can be scary. And hindsight is 2020, like all that stuff. But with taking that first step, it starts a momentum, right? As long as we keep that momentum going of taking the next step, and
Momentum
we're
becomes
able
habit.
to, yeah.
I have a follow-up question to that, because we do talk about the first step, in terms of setting our goals. But even in your example earlier, right, Lionel, like, let's say you've taken 10,000 steps towards your goal, right? How do you handle the fear of of feeling like you're never getting there? Or how do you handle the anxiety, or maybe even pressure? Because sometimes I know for the way that you perceive social media is great. I wish that upon everyone in the world, that they can look at someone's post and be like, I want to be like that. Let me look at the steps to get there. When from what I've observed, again, not generalizing or anything, but what I've noticed is that a lot of people, myself included, you can kind of get into that dialogue with yourself, like, oh, so and so is getting married. Oh, so and so, got that job promotion. And you start to feel the pressure creep up a little bit, right? Even if it might be at different levels for everybody, depending on whatever it is that you feel like you're lacking in, right? But how did you self-correct that fear? Or what did you tell yourself? What did you reassure yourself? This is for anyone, not just Lionel, but you know, in being able to take these feelings, because it's kind of hard to shift our mindset, right? Sometimes. Um, Maybe I'll ask that question. Why is it hard for us to kind of shift from that comparison? And how do you shift personally when you find yourself maybe that you've reverted into that comparison? How do you shift? Because it is hard, right? It is hard sometimes to shift. Even your example, Melby, that you gave earlier, you said it took years, right? It took years before you could really get yourself to that point. So how do we navigate that? How do we manage that?
For me, I've learned to let go of what I cannot control and control what's within me. You see, we're all built different. Our paths are all different. We choose our paths in different ways, right? We have expectations within ourselves. But the thing is, sometimes we need to remember that we cannot be carried over by what the society expects of us and what others are also achieving. We need to focus on us, on ourselves. Because if you think about it, if you're going to bombard your intentions, your emotions, your expectations by what others expect from you or what you expect within yourself, we know we're capable of doing changes, uh, you know, taking actions, right? Like each one of you said, we have, we have our own abilities, but the first thing we need to do there in order to change our mindset is we need to stop comparing. Others have, even if they amass wealth or success in this world, so what? Let them be happy. What we need to take care of is us. How can we make ourselves happy? How can, like what Lionel said, what are those steps that we need to take? So you take it one day at a time. And when EJ mentioned what if, try not to think what if. Yes, we do have options, but live with what is. Because what you have at present is what matters, and what you decide from now on will carry you to your future. Forget about what you did yesterday. Forget about the past. You cannot relive your past, but our past, our history, we can learn a lot from them. And we grow on a daily basis. It doesn't matter how old we are, if you think about it, right? And it doesn't matter who we meet along the way. Some we end up having as mentors, some we end up as having as best friends. And if they're successful, they give us those tips and resources that we need to move on forward to what we need to achieve in our lives. So, in order for us to overcome that battle within us, we need first to address what those issues are, and then take them apart and address them one by one. That's how I had to redo my life, my perception, my mindset in order to get where I am today. And if I can do it, I believe that anyone can do it as well. But granted that you believe in yourselves, of course. And have fun with it. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall back once in a while. Been there, done that, yes. But the most important thing is you progress, not regress, right? On a daily basis, and take your past experiences, whether if it's bad or good, take that with you and move on forward to your next step.
I
EJ,
do yeah, I do because I do want to add to that now. In this specific like example that I'm gonna say, it's like if you do find yourself, like you do find yourself back to like where you started, or maybe not like really making progress, like the natural response to that might be, like, oh, I'm back to square one. Oh, like what went wrong? Why am I here again? Like, look at that. Instead, look at that as another opportunity. But then you've already made the steps before. You know the steps to take now, and and to add to that, you know what step took you back to square one, so you can avoid that step. Like, and if the next step also brings you back to where you began, you can take another step. Like, you accumulate experience, right? It's not that, like, being back to square one, uh of like whatever you're working on. It's not in like a video game where, if you lose, you're back to level one. You're back to, no, like, you already know what to expect. You already know what steps to take. So it's like the second time around, the third time around, it's gonna progressively gonna get easier because you're leveling up every time. You're getting that experience every time. You're learning you're learning the steps, right? So try not to think too much about the, oh, now I'm here again, I'm back here again, oh, I didn't meet my goal again. It's like, it's it's like a progressive, no, a progressive thing where you have to constantly, you might have to constantly repeat some things, but like I said, you already know what step to take next. You already know what to expect. You already know what you're gonna have to face. So I know it's I forgot what I was trying to say, or I lost my train of thought there for a second. But like, that's my point. It's like, you already know the steps. If it doesn't work out, then do like find out, analyze where you made a mistake, and then try to see if you need to shift, if analyze if you need to take another path, if you need to acquire certain skill, a certain asset first, before you're able to overcome what blocked you in the first place, diba? But yeah, that's what I wanted to add to what Melody
You
said.
both said like so many great things. I'm trying to see like should I respond to any of it? No, but just great points on all fronts, and I'm really glad that you both brought up that perspective in terms of correcting those things, right? Being able to correct um, some form of thinking, right? Some form of thinking in both of your examples. For Melvi, what I gathered from yours, a lot of it was expectations of how you think it should go, right? It should go this way, or even that idea of, related to Lionel's example earlier with comparison of, being able to be real with yourself. Like, is that really what I want? Like, is that goal that I'm pushing for, or that I feel pressured with, is that really going to be the thing that's for me, for my life, that's rooted in my beliefs, that's rooted in what's valuable to me, right? And then for EJ, for you, I relate to that totally with the mental dialogue, right? We get caught up with that, where it's like we start to have this whole conversation in our head about, about that one failure, about that setback, and you're like, I can't believe you did that again. Why are you always doing it? Like right? You start to, and you kind of get carried away with it a little bit. And that actually brings me to my next question, because you both touched on it a little bit, right? In terms of, you know, we have our mindset, right? And that's something that we kind of sit with all the time. And it falls under one of those things that we are actually in control of. Like, we won't be able to control our immediate thought, maybe, but we have the power to do that reframe, right? To shift into that positivity. So you mentioned self-awareness earlier, Melvi. You mentioned being able to be aware in terms of, and when you said that, I thought of like self-reflecting. Um, for all of you, in terms of the different goals that you've pursued, it doesn't have to be any of the things that you've talked about, right? But is there a thing that you can share that you've done to kind of, I guess, self-correct an action that you may have taken? Because we think about they always have that saying, right? Where it's like the stuff that happened to you, I don't remember the full quote, but a lot of what happens to us, right? How well we deal with it is based off our reaction. And we kind of think of reaction versus response, right? We can react to something and we can have that emotion, whatever it may be, but then there's also a response, which is something that's more intentional. So when you think about those things in terms of the goals that you've tried to pursue, right? How have you done that kind of correction? Like you realize that these actions that you were taking, okay, this isn't working. This isn't working. And like you had a shift, or you had that alternative that you opted for instead. What comes to mind? I saw you nodding, Lionel. Do you have something in mind to share? Sorry, didn't mean to put you.
Yes. Sorry, repeat the question one more time.
So in terms of actions, right? Actions that you've kind of corrected with keeping in the idea of reaction versus response. Like maybe in the pursuit of your goals, your reaction, you were having this kind of reaction that you realize maybe I can shift this into a different kind of response where it was more intentional as opposed to something being more reactionary.
Yes. Going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the show was when I went to community college. Um, I failed. Funny enough. So, for those that don't know, I studied engineering, graduated in engineering, I have a job in engineering, but I failed one of my math classes twice. And it wasn't until the third time that I was able to pass it. Um, and each time, like, first time I went through it, I was like, okay, that didn't work. Um, at first, I was like, oh no, it wasn't, the professor wasn't that good. I'll try this other professor. I know that they're good. And then one of my classmates told me, "Oh, yeah, she's good at all of the other subjects except for the one that you just took." I'm like, "Okay, no, that's why it's hard." But I still, it was too late for me to drop the class, so I still went to the class, even though it was a bit harder to learn. But I made sure that this time, I made sure that whatever that was being taught, I tried to learn as much as possible. Now, that time I still didn't pass the class, but I tried one more time, but this time with another professor, right? Trying to find different ways to achieve that goal that I wanted to do is uh, basically transfer out to a university. And that last one, I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. Sometimes life takes us through all these different paths, have us meet all these people, and sometimes it's showing us, maybe this isn't the way to do it. And here's another way to do it. Nope, that's not how to do it. There's another one. Um, and it's very up to us of how, like we mentioned before, how we react. One thing I did want to sort of impart was, for those that are struggling with like, oh, but the reaction part is try to show up for yourself, because if you don't show up for yourself, who will? Right? It's the thinking of, okay, um that's part of the self-reflection part, right? Try to figure out what we need to do versus what we want to do as well.
Awesome. I appreciate that answer. Yeah, keep showing up. That's one of the things I always try to remind myself is, showing up is the first part of it, right? Before anything else, you have to be willing to do it for yourself, right? It's I think of that in terms of like discipline. When you're trying to be like when we talked about earlier working out, right? Like you're gonna be the one ultimately who benefits from the thing that you're doing, but you also have to be the one that moves yourself to do the things to get them done, right?
Yeah, and
So before
sometimes, if you need to take R&R, show up for yourself to take R&R. Breaks are good. Breaks are good.
Thanks for that reminder, too, because I don't do that enough for myself. So everyone out there, rest is part of the process too, right? Uh, Before we continue on with the conversation, we do have another person who's joined us in our conversation for today. She's one of my great friends, one of my greatest friends over there across the pond, if I can say. And we're happy to have her. I'll go let her introduce herself. How are you doing? Erica.
Hi, Tony. Hello, everybody who's joined INCRadio chat line. I am Erica, live from London, and I just wanna apologize in advance because I'm a cough a little bit. But here, the weather is actually pretty like you just get expect the unexpected. Anyways, I'm loving the conversation. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, but I'll catch up.
No, you're good. You're good. No worries. So what? Just to catch you up, and anyone who might just be tuning in with us just now, we've been talking about troubleshooting, basically our goals throughout this our talk today, and we're more on the actionable part, right? Because we talked about the mental stuff, we talked about maybe the things that we feel like we're lacking in terms of our assets, but this is the part where we can really kind of break down what actions are we really taking, right? Like, how are we going about it? And what are the things that we're doing, not just in the beginning, but even in the midst of the process when we feel like we're hitting a wall? Because that's a troubleshooting, right? We feel like we're hitting a wall. We feel like we're not getting to where we want to go, to where we need to be. We talked a little bit about expectations of feeling like we need to be at that place right now. Maybe not being patient enough to wait, right? So, for EJ and Melby, I know we'll give Erica a little bit more time to process the conversation a little bit. But for both of you, when things don't go as planned, what are some ways that you've reacted in the past versus the response? Like, how has it changed for either of you in terms of being able to correct that?
I think for me now it's what I try to do now is like what I mentioned earlier with, well, what's getting in the way? Like if I feel like I'm not making progress, what's getting in the way? Is it my mindset that's getting in the way? Where am I having, I'm having a self doubts? Am I having those what ifs again? Like, or is it a lack of assets? But am I lacking the knowledge to progress in this path? Am I lacking a certain skill to progress? Do I need to do more research? Like for me, sort of like my response now, because it's my response now because what I realized when I was reflecting is that it's the opposite of what I did before. Before I was stuck on the what ifs. Before I was stuck on like if I didn't have the skill, then I just try to, well, maybe it's not for me. If I didn't have the knowledge for it, it's like, oh, well, maybe maybe I'm supposed to do something else. Like where now it's like, okay, like what you mentioned before, it's like, this is what you want to, this is what I want to achieve. What do I need? What do I need? How do I push myself past that mental block that I'm putting myself at, where it's like, oh, you don't know what problems you're gonna encounter if you pursue this. The what ifs again. Like it's now I'm trying to push myself past that. I try to analyze it, but what do I need to, what do I need to meet this goal? Kind of like what Lionel was saying like earlier.
Yeah, it reminds me of self-awareness, right? Like that
Mhm.
awareness of being able to check yourself. Because sometimes we forget to do that, right? It may be the tendency that we want to blame all the other things, except maybe like looking inward at ourselves. I've been guilty of that, right? Just like, oh, it's because so and so is like this.
Yeah, it's maybe
Right?
it's if you like something, maybe, oh, maybe it's not for me. Like it's like everyone who's reached that point, they've had to push past, like what they thought their limits was, but they had to learn something that they didn't know. Is how I remind myself that, like everyone who's like, a scientist had to learn all of like the different theories, different research, the different everyone who's a doctor had to learn a lot of like different terms. diba? That a lot of, and it's that, like, it's going to be tough, but if it's really what you want to achieve, then you have to, I know, you have to go through those, I know, you have to go through the hoops as well. You can't just expect na you'll be able to pick it up like really quickly, because sometimes it's not always gonna work like that. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of what Melby said earlier, right? In a way, you have to be okay with where you are, but you still have to be willing to do something about it, right? Like having that patience for where you are in the process, but still trying to troubleshoot, like still trying to make the moves, still trying to do the things like, okay, if it's happening this way, like yeah, you may feel sad, right? Like disappointment will still come in the back of your mind. You're like, okay, I'm gonna cry through it, but we'll get through this, right?
Mhm.
It's being able to kind of deal with the emotion, but still get past it in some way, right? And I think about, what our potential coping mechanisms may be, like when we're doing that stuff, right? Like if I can ask Melvi, for you in terms of, because that's really hard, like the situation that you brought up earlier, and it's undeniable, just flat out, it's we don't want to sugarcoat it, it's hard, right? So what are the ways that you kind of help yourself cope through the ups and downs when you were going through that? Like what actions did you take for yourself? I know Lionel kind of mentioned earlier, like rest, because you mentioned there was a point of burnout, but what were some things, because a lot of people experience burnout in all different aspects of life. So what are some actions that you kind of took for yourself in order to cope better with what was happening to you when you weren't hitting the goals that you wanted for yourself at that point in life?
When things don't work out for me, I've accepted it. I've learned to move on. Then I make, a list of my short-term and long-term goals and then take more actions into those. I actually made a list, I journalized, I assess my actions and reactions to different circumstances that come in my way. There are times I easily get frustrated. I can be sensitive. I can be, I feel like I'm, a disappointment for myself. So all these, obstacles that I try to overcome, I do it to where I would take an action, and if that doesn't work out, I'm going to try a different path or a different action in order to better my life, better the situation, better my mindset. Because if we don't, or I don't, then that means I'm stuck, and I don't want to be stuck. I want to move on forward. So again, it's really taking that one step at a time to be able to do what you must in order not to also impact, your health, because our health is really important. If we cannot take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and all that, all that stuff, then it's hard to move forward with what we want to achieve in life, right? So in my case, when I know that I feel like I'm not getting enough breaks, not enough rest, not enough sleep, not enough nutrients in my body, then I make it a goal that I do that at least sometime during the week and not neglect myself. Because what happened was before, I do have a tendency to neglect my physical health because of all the responsibilities I have to fulfill on a daily basis. So, in order for me to achieve my goal, I realize, well, I also need to be somewhat selfish for myself, right? So, when people ask me, oh, can you hang out? I'm like, I'm sorry, maybe next time because I really need to take a break and rest. And that way I don't get sick. So those, proactive actions that we, depending on the situation you're in, that you take step moving forward and is really crucial, important. Because after all, who else can take care of us but ourselves, right? So yeah, yeah, those are the things that I've learned and continue to do in my daily life.
It's good reminders, right? Because in order to do anything, our bodies still have to be functional.
Yeah.
Our bodies still have to be functional, right? I do want to. I don't know if she's ready. I think she's had some time to kind of process a little bit of the conversation. Erica, are you able to speak on some of the stuff that we talked about? I
Yes,
you are you.
I
No,
was
go ahead.
actually totally agreeing with what Melvi said because I was like, it's
Yeah.
like she's really talking to me, and you know that, Tony. I was like, yeah, That's making me smile.
I saw that.
All right. Well, when it comes to the action part of us trying to reach our goal, right? We do have different whatchamacallit, status in life, right? So I don't know what you are at in your journey, but what I can say is I think when it comes to reaching your goal, it's always gonna be a similar cycle where we always strive to reach it in every possible way, because as much as we do face failures, disappointments, that's just us not only learning how to be patient, but also to be resilient. Because I remember what EJ has mentioned that in the beginning we'd be like, or some of us would be we would feel, it's too morning for me for English. Sorry. Okay. Um, we would feel like it's not meant for us because we don't have um, a certain set of skills needed for the goal that we're trying to look for or we're trying to reach for. But at the same time, whilst growing, we learn that we can pick up these skills, right? And for me, um, growing up, I thought that I was limited in certain things, but it's about persistence and also not only discipline but also the ambience where you're growing up, because the people that surround you, those are the ones that will remind you as well when you're feeling like you don't want to do it. They're gonna be there calling you out, and I'm not saying that it's their job to do it, because at the end of the day, if you're not gonna do it, it's on you. Like, let's face it, our goals are individual goals, and as much as we want someone to help us keep our accountability, it's still up to us. Yep, I'm definitely talking from experience. But whenever we feel like we're we're behind or we're not really reaching that goal, I guess there's like two reactions, and that's totally up to you. It's either you give up or you keep pushing, and you push yourself not only to the limit, but at the same time, knowing that at the beginning you lack, so it's still on you. You're aware of that. You're not blaming anyone. That's the main point, because sometimes certain things happen, and the natural thing for you to do is, oh, it's because of this and this. But instead of that, we should think, oh, how can I make it better because I've been doing this. So it's more on how my past actions were, so that I can improve and do it better. I'm literally saying what I'm supposed to do now. Okay. And then I just want to reiterate what Melvi has mentioned regarding not only, you know, taking action like physically, but also every like overall. It's like an overall or an, an overall thing, because we can't just focus on our mental or emotional health. It has to be also physical, or like, the other way around, because they're all connected to each other. And also sorry, yes, because if not, you're gonna get sick like me right now. Just kidding. But other than that, if also things don't go as planned, it's um it's like a way for you to be creative too, because that means that it's either really not meant for you, so it's a no, or it could be yes later, right? Because you're you're trying to be more patient, more resilient, or when you think that you've done everything you could, and there's like no way you're gonna reach that goal, then that might be because at the end of it, it's not meant for you. And it may sting a lot. And I'm not saying a little. It may sting a lot because you've been really trying hard to reach that goal, but maybe there's something better for you. And you've just like focused on that goal for so long that you really want to reach it. But in reality, there was something bigger for you that you just realize after, like the last straw. So it really depends. And besides, like coping mechanisms when you fail, it really depends on the person. But what I can say is that me personally, it's about thinking the positive side. There's no negative side, like negativity in everything that happens to us, because there's always a reason for us to learn. So if you think that you're failing, no, you're not failing. It's like literally you learning something more about yourself, about the goal that you're reaching, or about your limits. And yes, that's pretty much it. Sorry, I talked a lot.
It's a lot of good points, a lot of bits and pieces, just kind of all connecting together, and that's what I loved about your answer as well. Being able to touch on those things, Erica. I know you have a lot of things. I could fully tell you were speaking from experience, just from knowing you. She has a lot. For those who don't know, she has a lot going on. She balances a lot of things, and what I heard from all of you, a lot of it really starts in our actions. It starts with the reframing here of whatever expectations that we have going into things, even the way that we deal with things, right? Like mentally first, and then into our actions as well. So we really have to make sure that we're correcting it up here. Again, not we're not here to say that we can't feel the emotions that we feel, right? Like what was said, we will experience disappointment, we will experience frustration, we will experience hitting the wall and asking like, I'm here again. I'm here again, right? But it's what we do after that, right? It's being able to have that reframe of getting back up. She mentioned resilience. I think of that grit, like that stamina, like, okay, this is what I like to ask myself. I always think of, okay, what's my trade-off for this? Because in anything that you do, in any pursuit that you have, you're always going to have to give something, right? You're going to have to give some kind of effort, whether it's time, whether it's, some kind of diligence is going to be necessary for you to achieve that goal. And I feel like sometimes we forget that, right? Like if you have the audacity to get this, like I have the, I want to publish a book one day. I always say that. And if I have the audacity to want to do that, I also have to be aware of myself, like it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work to get there. And what am I willing to sacrifice in order to pursue that goal, right? That's some of the things that I try to think about. And like what Melby said earlier, being able to accept what is and what isn't for you based off what your trade-offs are. Because as Christians also, we have our principles, right? The things that we don't want to give up, the things that we don't want to trade up. And having those things be aligned also with our goals is important for us, because we want to be able to say that even when we pursue these goals, these are the things that I didn't give up on. These are the things that I still maintain that are important to me. And being able to be focused on the right things that will all the more elevate our life, right? So this has been a very enriching, I don't know, for you guys, for me, a very enriching conversation. I feel like I've gotten so many solutions, and that's another thing too, right? Being able to get solutions from the right places. I've loved this conversation, and I just want to go around and ask if anyone has any more to add, before we close it out. You don't have to, but if you would like to, you're welcome to add any last bits.
If I can just add to what Erica mentioned, and this is me like kind of being able to process what I was trying to say earlier in a more concise manner. Like think of like a basketball player. How many times did they miss their shots before they started to make 3 points, right? How many frustrations did they have? How many times did they think, nah, oh, maybe this isn't for me, right? But because they had that dream, they wanted to achieve. They practiced continuously. I won't mention the specific basketball player I'm thinking of, but he had this mindset of like when he met his goal, he thinks of the next one right away. And he like it didn't matter that he was already a professional. He he still wanted to make more progress. He still wanted to reach higher, like a higher goal, right? And like for me, I try to think of it like in that way. That if I really, if I really want something, of course, I can also consider the trade off. But if I really want something, right? Just think of the people who have got there. What how many frustrations they've had, how many failures they've had before they reach that goal, right? And who am I to expect not? Who am I to think that I won't also encounter those same problems? I might encounter those same problems. I might encounter more problems, but the the end is still the same. That if I want to reach that goal, like what you've all mentioned about, you have to be the one to also push yourself to work towards that goal, through the failures, through the hardships, through all of the things that all the mental things that might be pulling you down, the doubts, the fears that you might be feeling. You also have to be the one but it helps to think of the people who are already there, and think of like what they also had to experience to get there. But yeah, that's what I wanted to add to what Erica said.
Anybody else? Melvi, Lionel, any final thoughts?
Be patient. Don't give up. You got this. Embrace your imperfections because it's what make you special.
Lionel?
Take that first step. Life will throw curveballs every which way, but as long as we're able to pick ourselves up, we will be okay.
Okay. Erica? Anything?
They all said everything I wanted to
Okay.
say. So yes, all good.
Okay. So to everyone who's listened to this broadcast, we're right there with you. We've all been through it, right? We're all in that position, right? Goals, troubleshooting, we're all trying to figure it out, right? But like what they said, keep going, figure out what's getting in your way, get it out of the way. Okay. Go and try to your best to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, and stay true to your values, stay true to what's important to you. So thanks for hanging out with us for the last hour for our talk. We hope that this has been helpful to you, and please share this link with anyone that you think will benefit from this conversation. We hope that it's been a conversation that mattered to you. So we'll see you next time on INCRadio Chatline. Bye, everyone.